If you've played S.T.A.L.K.E.R, you've probably noticed a weird faction that doesn't appear in the other Stalker games. The Renegades really look like a downgraded version of the Bandits. But is that truly the case? Hello Stalkers and welcome to the Anomalous Dugout. In this video, we will take a close look at the Renegades faction. The Renegades act as the first human enemies encountered in the game, as they are engaged into a war with the S.T.A.L.K.E.R faction over the control of the Great Swamp. Here it is explained that the Renegades are basically bandits, who arrived in the swamp after new routes to that area were opened by the big emission that occurs in the opening scene. The Renegades are trying to make the Great Swamp their territory by destroying S.T.A.L.K.E.R, and at the beginning of the game they will occupy most of the area. At this point, the Renegade faction is at its strongest, with around 60 members in the Great Swamp, and control over the watchtower, the pump station, the church, the burned farm, the ruined village, the northern hut, and the camp near the truck. They also control all the exit routes to Agroprom, Northern Cordon, and Southern Cordon, and their main base is located in the machine yard. In order to progress in their goal to stop emissions, S.T.A.L.K.E.R first need to retake control over the swamp, and thus engages the mercenary S.T.A.L.K.E.R into a first faction war with the Renegades. Because of this, that section of the game is often considered as a tutorial to show the faction war system to the player, which is one of the main new features of the game. The stalkers of the Renegade faction that take part in this war are very poorly equipped, with standard low-quality bandit outfits and weapons such as PMM pistols and double-barrel shotguns. Then, the Renegades appear in two other instances much later into the game, that is in the mine in the Red Forest and at the bridge to Limansk, where they once again act as antagonists to S.T.A.L.K.E.R and S.T.A.R. This time around, they are equipped with much better gear, such as bandit combat armors and trench coats, which are usually only used by veteran gangsters. And they wield rare and powerful SA Avalanche assault rifles. So after seeing this, it feels like the Renegades have only been created for one purpose, which is to have a clear antagonist faction that fits the progression of the story and gameplay. It makes sense from a technical point of view to create a new faction to take the place of the bad guys, because this time around it could not have been the Bandits, like it was in Shadow of Chernobyl. That is because the new faction war system includes the possibility of joining the Bandits, so they could not be the main antagonists. And so the Renegades act as a perfect tutorial faction to fight against, as they are very weak and poorly equipped at the beginning of the game, and nobody cares about them, so it's okay to kill them. And as for the Renegade squads found much later in the Red Forest, they are just generically equipped with better gear, just to fit the role of late-game opponents. All of this goes to show that the Renegades were created only for gameplay purposes, and in fact, they have no real backstory. They are indeed never mentioned by NPCs of other factions, except for S.T.A.L.K.E.R of course, who simply refers to them as bandits. However, we cannot reduce the Renegades as only being a tutorial, universally hated faction, and if they have no direct backstory, let's come up with one, shall we? First of all, it is actually possible to become neutral with the Renegades, at least those staying in the swamp. After clearing the area, there will most likely remain 3 Renegade squads, at the northern exit to Cordon, at the transition to the Agroprom, and at the camp near the truck. If you join the Bandits, these squads will become neutral to you, and you will be able to interact with them. However, they don't say anything interesting, as their dialogues seem to be taken from Clear Sky, Bandit, and even Loner dialogues. The interesting thing is that the two later Renegade squads, those in the Red Forest, will always be hostile even if you join the Bandits, despite the fact that you are neutral to the Swamp Renegades. This, combined with the fact that those Renegades have much better equipment than the rest of their faction, really makes it look like these two squads are not actually from the same faction. So how can we come up with an explanation to this? And also, in which way are the Renegades different from the Bandits? Basically, who are the Renegades? To answer these questions, we first need to understand how the Bandit faction works. In Clear Sky, the Bandit faction appears to be well organized, much like a large criminal organization which controls its own territory, the Garbage. Their main activities include robbing, extortion, murder of key stalkers and witnesses, kidnapping, and even forced labor. They are also at war with the Loner, stalkers united under the command of Valerian. They have a large and well-fortified base in the train hangar, which even includes a bar, a trader, and a technician workshop. The commanding structure of the Bandit faction is unclear, but they do have a leader in the person of Yoga. Overall, they remind me a lot of a sort of mafia. Now, for the Renegades, we don't really see what type of activities they engage in, apart from fighting with Clear Sky. They seem to be more aggressive than the Bandits, as they tend to fire on sight. We also know that they indeed commit robberies, as they stole the compass artifact from Forrester, but he also claims that they only spared him because he's an old man. This would confirm the suspicion that the Renegades are much more hostile than regular Bandits. As for the commanding structure, it is unknown if the faction has a leader, but it is at least a bit organized, since they are able to launch coordinated operations in their war against Clear Sky and communicate orders via radio. I think the main difference between the Bandits and the Renegades is that the Renegades have a different leader or a different leading structure. Even in the Bandit faction itself, there are people and groups who don't really want to follow the orders of Yoga, and as we know, the barman Borov would go on to take the spot of Bandit leader before the events of Shadow of Chernobyl. So it seems that Yoga is quite an unpopular leader, and because of this, I believe that the Renegades are former Bandits who refused to have Yoga as their leader, and so they decided to create their own faction. It is important to know that originally there were supposed to be several different Bandit factions in Shadow of Chernobyl, with different leaders and maybe even different motivations and objectives. This idea was ultimately cut, but maybe you'll recognize the Black Slugs. Well, they were planned to be one of these bandit groups. I think the Renegades are like a successor to this idea. As for their behavior towards the bandits, here's what I like to assume. Even though they don't like Yoga, they tolerate the bandits under his command, and that's why they are generally neutral to them. However, they don't let anyone walk into their secret camps and private territories, explaining why the squads in the Red Forest are hostile to even bandits. Finally, concerning these Red Forest squads, the only explanation I can give is that, much like other factions, the Renegades sent their best squads to the north after the Great Emission. Indeed, this emission that starts the game opened many new routes to previously unknown territories, such as the Red Forest and Limansk. and so most factions sent experienced squads in these areas. For example, Duty has soldiers in the Red Forest, Freedom in the army warehouses, and both clashed in Limansk. Even the Bandits reached the city. With this in mind, I think the Renegades followed the trend and sent their best fighters, along with their best equipment, to the Red Forest area, and somehow they managed to capture the bridge to Limansk. I even got the feeling that their actual main base could be hidden somewhere around this part of the zone. At the end of Clear Sky, most known squads of renegades have been wiped out, and since the faction is not present in later games, it can be assumed that it was completely destroyed, or that the last members disbanded, maybe joining the ranks of the Bandits. However, the zone is large, and we know that there are many groups that we don't see at all in the games. So it is completely possible that the Renegades survived the events of Clear Sky and are still an active faction. I would have loved to find out more lore about them, but there doesn't seem to exist much more than this. Hopefully we can correct that by creating our own stories, so you can expect some Renegades to show up in the next episode of our Campfire Stories from the zone. It would also be awesome if the Renegades were to come back in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, along with other factions similar to the Bandits, but with a proper background and lore this time around. Anyway, be sure to leave a comment to let me know what you think about this. And as for now, I thank you for watching, Stalker, and goodbye.